So when the revolution comes, we're gonna replace all of like Rob Schneider's roles. We're gonna remake the movie, same cast, except replace Rob Schneider with what's his name, Steve Buscemi, and the world will be a better place
That's
for it.
fair.
Yeah, I mean that we
Yeah,
want to make the world a better place. So get rid of Rob Schneider, replace him with Steve Buscemi, and we're good to go.
I'm
I'm
fine with that.
yeah
That's
yeah
literally the only change we need to make.
that like well that and we need to remake all of Pimp C's tracks and replace Mike Jones with Danny Brown, and that would make the world a better
I'd be fine
place.
with that.
Yeah, I think that that does make the world a better place because I really hate Mike Jones so
Well,
much.
he's not really a thing anymore, though. Generally
Like
speaking.
no, but it's like so that was my coming of age, and I'm from Texas, as you can tell when the whiskey
Oh,
gets in me. So I mean that was like the thing, and then you go back into it. It's like
oh
why
yeah.
haven't I listened to Pimp C in a while? And then Mike Jones comes on. It's like oh that's why I don't listen to Pimp C anymore, and Pimp C can't make any more tracks, and that's the bad thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's a bad case of being dead.
yeah, bad case of being dead.
So did Mike Jones collab with UGK a lot?
Like he was on pretty much everything from that click for a little bit. Like he was on a couple Pimp
Hmm.
C tracks. He had his own thing on there, and I think he's got his own cognac there. I'm kind of wanting to try it because he's got to be good at something. And but no,
Yeah,
that's
I remember. What was that one song of his that like blew up nationally? That wasn't "We Fly High," was it?
no. It was who Mike Jones, and that was pretty much the entire track.
I gotta look this up real fast
All
because I
right,
know
all
there
right.
was one song that I heard a bunch on like radio. Was what the fuck, Mike Jones?
And the thing about it is, it's like I have to like give it to him. It's like I haven't heard about Mike Jones in 10 years. I still hate him. Well, I hate on
Mm.
him. I don't hate him as a person. Um, like Soldier Boy, I've heard about him and I don't like him. Aaron Carter, same thing.
Oh, he was the other half of "I'm in Love with a Stripper."
Oh really? Oh,
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, so that yeah, he was definitely there.
oh yeah. No. Like
It was,
yeah, he was there.
and then I think I might have heard "Still Tippin'"
Oh, I
back
don't
in the
think I've
day.
heard that one.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure about that. Still tipping, still tipping on fofos wrapped in faux vogues. Nah, I'm not
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I'm having flashbacks for that now.
I might have. I'm not totally sure because I know there's some. Oh, like it probably wasn't even a good song,
I
but
mean,
I remember there's one song.
yeah,
It might have just been "I'm in Love with a Stripper." I don't know. I
yeah.
might be misremembering.
Yeah, I think that was the one where it's like you can outdo do pretty much everything on here. Um, no, and
Oh, Jim Jones was who I was. Jim Jones was who
oh,
I was thinking
Jim
of.
Jones.
We
There
Fly
we go.
High.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, yeah,
Or
you
yeah,
know, a really good way to just make people want to listen to your music. Just name yourself after a literal death cult leader. And just yeah,
yeah.
that's some 10 out of 10 branding right there.
Oh God.
Come,
Well,
someone
that
come get your man.
yeah, that can segue into our current topic, which we might even just avoid that entirely because the whiskey's kicked in and I'm not feeling stuff on there. But we did lead in on the replace everything with Steve Buscemi or replace Rob Snyder with Steve Buscemi thing. So we are live now. I hope you don't
We
mind.
can do that. Hell yeah. Oh no, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
that's the note
I
you want to come in
endorse.
on.
No, I endorse all of my. I'll come in on Jim Jones.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I have. I mean I stand by everything that I say all the time.
a
And if you
hundred
imply
percent,
that I ever say anything problematic, then you're taking me out of context.
all the time. I mean, we're all like,
It's the Jordan B.
yeah,
Peterson
we're the best.
accountability.
Yeah. Or my ex boyfriend's method of accountability.
I feel that.
Oh
I'm
man.
so lucky that like I pretty much don't have like the few of like my exes that I'm still in contact with are pretty cool people. Another
Yeah.
one was never really into the fur fandom in to begin with, which is good because he's like I feel we'll get into him because that story involves sexual abuse. Content warning.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. We're
And
talking
then
about trauma and the things that cause trauma. So
yes,
if you're
like
worried that you might
inspiration of
resurface some old
MeToo.
traumas, we're probably gonna be hitting on that.
Oh yeah, no question. So that's gonna be a goddamn riot.
Oh man. Well, I mean that's one of the things
I
go with my relationship that was kind of bad. I think a lot of it is rooted within how we do agency. So it was in a point where like he was pretty much gaslighting me. That's kind of his thing.
mm,
And he would do it in such a way because it was a poly relationship kind of thing, and he would bring new people in there,
ugh,
and they would do the
yeah.
honeymoon phase. So it's like, well, it's working for them. Why isn't it working for me? And then he would say, oh,
Mm,
well, you're doing this wrong, da da da, and I forgive you. I'll be patient with you as work it out on there. And then it's just like because I wanted to have that sense of agency, I let myself be wrong because if I was wrong, it was something that I could fix and I could control, and
yeah.
all of this stuff like there. And that sense of agency that would root me to do that, whereas like I have to be in control and I have to be on top of it. I think that is a problem with manliness and men in particular within capitalism because we do fetishize our sense of agency and well the illusion thereof more than anything else because like we must be in control of everything all of the
Yeah.
time and if we're not then we're a failure and all of this like that and that's not how I'm gonna get the first S word of the day. That's not how our society works. And I think a lot of
Right.
that's with trauma as well. I'm gonna go ahead and let you speak because I'm just gonna go and do a
Oh no,
monologue.
don't forget to actually link the stream
Oh fuck
for
yeah,
people.
damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whiskey's kicked in. The whiskey is definitely kicked in.
That's very understandable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the
Some you
whole
have a
thing.
whiskey drink. I don't know the words. Chumbawamba. They were like a total they were an Chumbawamba was an anarchist band. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure. Totally
yeah.
off
They
topic.
are like Irish. I think Irish something.
Oh yeah, Irish fucking rule. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Hold on. Let
we're
me
talking about. Sorry, I
go.
don't
Yeah,
mean to
take
get
over
off
while
topic.
I go ahead and do the link real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, yeah, so like my first serious relationship. I don't want to get too into it, or excuse me, too long-winded. But my first relationship, was with a guy that I had met of all places through Team Fortress 2. Um, and it was mostly initiated by him for the most part. Like I wasn't particularly like I was very um what's the word I would use? Um blind?
Naive.
Just not yeah, perhaps naive, oh no, oblivious. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So like I had no idea. I couldn't tell from our interactions that he had any interest in me at all. So when he approached me, he was like, "Hey, I'm interested. Want to do a date thing?" I was like, okay, that makes sense to me." I mean, I guess because like I don't know anything about how dates work. I was raised, in problematic spaces on the internet and MySpace and shit like that.
Yeah,
So all
yeah,
of my concepts of relationships are totally fucked up and problematic. So
yeah, yeah.
me, a brain genius 18-year-old, I think I just go with it's like whatever, why not?
Yeah, you learn
The
romance
thing
through fan fiction and reruns of Queer as Folk.
so oh god, I watched the first episode of the original Queer as Folk. I There are so many problems that could be an entire hour long episode on its own. Um,
Yeah,
this is my
Russell T
opinion. So
Davis's sins that don't involve hiring Stephen Moffat. Yeah,
Christ. um, so we met up in person. Eventually, I had to lie to my parents in order to do it, of course, because they were still in that phase where uh, there would be the horror stories on the now and then on your local news of so and so met someone they met online and were sexually abused by blah blah blah. So of course I had to lie to them in order to be able to go there. But I mean, for the first week, everything seemed pretty dandy. There was physical intimacy, lots of emotional intimacy, just kind of getting to know each other better. But as time went on, um, very similar to what you experienced. He, I introduced him to someone that he eventually developed a romantic interest in as well. So he wanted to do the both of them wanted to do like a poly thing with me. Um, and again, just like when I met the original dude, we'll call him I don't know. We'll call him Andy, and Andy and Bob, I guess, for A and B. Why not? So Andy was the original dude. Um, I didn't have an interest in him initially, but he came on to me, and then I didn't have an interest in Bob originally, but Andy and Bob both then came on to me, and I didn't have any concept of being able to say no because all I wanted to do was make people happy, and so you can already tell where this story is going. Um, so they lived closer to
Yeah.
each other. They were like an hour from each other. I was like 10 hours from them. So they got to be closer with each other, far more significantly than I was able to. So that meant they ended up talking more, sharing their thoughts more, and it very quickly, evolved into them basically just complaining about me all the time. Um, and then since they were able to have such close access to each other, um, it was basically a majority rules relationship. So it would be 2 to 1 on basically everything because they were able to meet up in person and talk everything out, um, or insert innuendo here things out, um,
Yeah.
so very quickly it evolved into basically me being the villain in everything. I was the problem with everything in the relationship, um, and I couldn't communicate any of my gripes because I was overridden. Because again, there was two people on one side
Right. Right.
versus me on my own side. I had no backup basically because I had gone in under the false pretense that this was going to be an equal relationship between the three of us, and it was very very clearly not. Obviously, since I was 18, 19, 20 at this time, so I still didn't know shit about the world. Neither did they, but I didn't know how to turn them down, basically. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. Eventually, I learned how to stand up for myself. I got convinced by another furry friend um, that I kind of vented about them to him, and he was like, "Dude, just dump them. If you're so far away from them, you'll never have to see them again, ever again in your life if you don't want to." And of course, I fought it, of course, because I was an abuse victim at this point. I had to defend them. Um, I was like, oh, I mean, it's okay, it's my fault, I did something to deserve, but it's we always make things up, as long as I can go visit them, then it's fine. Never mind that they never come to visit me. Never mind that they ever try to make any accommodations for me. Never mind that none of my grievances are ever taken seriously. So I had to do it all for them, of course. And anything that was wrong was my fault. Also, oh, by the way, I was raped by Andy as well too, so that's fun.
Oh.
Uh,
Oh. Yeah.
yep,
That's.
yep. And that went along with all of that. Um, and again, like I didn't know, like it took until the Bill Cosby allegations got made super public, and a bunch of women started coming out, with their own, their Me Too stories. Basically, it
Right.
took until Me Too happened for me to understand that what he had done was rape. I didn't know at the time. I don't think he knew at the time either. And we were both
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
We were both each other's first time. So again, we didn't know shit about anything, but I mean, like consent is a pretty it's not a very difficult concept.
No. No, it isn't.
But yeah. So there we go. So it was physical and emotional abuse. I'm I I'm very happy for. Wait, no, no. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was about to say there because there's nothing that I was happy about in
Yeah.
that
No. You're happy that it's
situation.
over, that it's done, and that you can learn to avoid those things on betting. But
Oh yes,
if there was a quicker
absolutely.
way, most certainly, we definitely would opt for that. Myself as well. Uh, I was more of the asshole when I was 19 and 18, quite a bit, and I've said the magical words that every victim really needs to hear from the people that have hurt them on there is like, you didn't deserve that. And then I left them on there because I don't want to rekindle things. I just want to let them know that they didn't deserve the stuff on the abuse that I hurled on them, and it wasn't.
Mm,
I mean, it was bad. Thank God I'm not the same person. I'm 19 anymore.
yeah.
Oh, thank God. But there's a lot of that where it's like I thought that I was the victim and that lashing out would be was apt because of all that. And it's like in hindsight, it's like no, we're all fucking 19-year-old, 20-year-olds just trying to figure out life, and they shouldn't you shouldn't have expectations to view them as no shit when you don't know shit yourself. And it's just like okay, great. Thank God I'm not 19
Mm.
anymore. Thank God that that was before Facebook stuff because I would have been a Facebook mean girl
Mhm.
on there. But that's I don't know what we're trying to do. We're trying to think about trauma, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
yeah trauma, trauma, trauma.
I can lead on that if you want.
Well, you want to lean on that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so yeah, I mean, like obviously, I had trauma from that experience. I mean, unquestionably so. I mean, there was so much that basically, like, I thought it would have been permanent damage, essentially. Um, both of them, both Andy and Bob, both of them that I was in the relationship with, both of them were born and raised on 4chan. Um, so they had very interesting views about, people of other races sometimes,
Yeah.
but what kind of jokes are acceptable. Their entire families basically just used the hard R N word pretty freely, um, which horrified me. And but again, it's one of the things. Well, no one else has a problem with it. You're weird by being the only one who has a problem with it. So I couldn't say anything about it. So, and then that affected my very lexicon. Like I had to unlearn that
Yeah.
over the next years.
Yeah.
That's not because like I knew that it was wrong, but they used it so frequently that it was just ingrained into me. So that's one of the more innocuous things that was more trauma, like the with the sexual abuse thing. Basically, so not only the climax of that was of course Andy you know sexually assaulting me, of course. Um,
Right.
but there was lots of sexual coercion as well too. I was never really particularly interested in sex, like even like when I was way young. Like I had no interest in like Hustler or whatever. Like one of my friends as a
Yeah.
going away gift. Well, a bunch of our friends got them a Hustler magazine because that was somehow still a thing that we did in like 2003.
Okay.
I had no idea
Yeah.
that was a thing,
Still exist.
but
Like
yeah, that was
internet's
a
there.
thing that we decided was cool apparently. But like, I wasn't interested in like any porn, porn of men, porn of women, whatever. None of that interested me. So I kind of had to just kind of submit and kind of acquiesce to their whims, in order to kind of keep the relationship normal, and that had it obviously incredibly long, incredibly damaging effects on me. I became an abuser myself after breaking off that relationship. So not thankfully not a physical abuser, not a sexual abuser, for the love of God. Thank God for that. But I'm very much an emotional abuser. Um, as well as I would certainly say coercive. I was intimately coercive. While I
Yeah.
didn't do sex, I was very much, there are still things that I wanted, and I would absolutely use people. Um, to get those things, and I knew that I was using them, and I knew that it was probably not okay, but
Yeah.
that's what I had picked up from that abusive relationship. I didn't know that that relationship that I had been in was not normal, because
Yeah.
that was my first serious relationship. Like, I'd been in a few like internet flings and whatnot in high school and whatnot.
Yeah.
I had a high school girlfriend that went all right for a while. Um, but she was she was raised in an NRA family. Uh, so thankfully she's a socialist now, but she had to go away to college in Northern California for a few years until it eventually worked that out of her system.
Yeah.
And so that unfortunately massively adversely affected my other relationships. And unfortunately I damaged a lot of my friendships, especially in the online spaces and furry spaces, pretty much beyond repair. A lot of them have permanently distanced themselves from me, and and I know that it's my fault. Of course, fault, quote unquote, is kind of, it's not exactly a fair term to use, but when you
They were
don't
your
respect other
actions.
people's right, yeah, I didn't respect their autonomy. I didn't respect them as equal human beings. And even
Right.
though I at least by my estimate, I have changed, they have no obligation to try and make amends with me. And that's understandable. But that was, again, a huge part of trying to work out the trauma of just learning. I had to relearn basic social interactions with people because of how damaged I was. And it took me a good 5 years after that. The relationship lasted a bit over 2 years. It took me like 5 years to actually finally get over what had been done to me and start to truly evolve again as a person.
Yeah, and that's like there's not really anything that teaches you how to do that, especially in regards to media and all that. It definitely sensationalizes it, and it's like there's either you kill the bad guy in the Batman movie and then ooh your trauma's over, or there's like there's a fetishization of victims in media,
Mhm.
like quite a bit, and it's just like it doesn't show like how healing works. It's just like, oh no, you're broken, and that the brokenness and that affront is then used to justify, the plot and all this stuff like that. Like, I learned
Mhm.
relationships off of Queer as Folk reruns and fan fiction. That's kind of true because I didn't really have a lot of gay media in 2004 and five, and it was basically
Oh yeah.
just yeah, which is why we see all this representation. It's like, oh yeah, what's Steven Universe gonna do? And then you see a Gen Z versus a millennial queer kid, and it's just like, oh, that's what
Mhm.
that does. Great. Why are
Oh
you
yeah.
not broken? Fuck you. And then you get
Yes,
to deal
I
with
know
that jealousy.
exactly.
Oh god, like thank
It
God.
must, yeah, it's like, oh, it must be nice being able to be comfortable in who you are as a person and not be traumatized by by not being allowed to be who you are. It must be nice that these privileged Zoomers with their
With their green hair,
fake, with their green hair and their having emotional stability in their lives.
their
Oh,
ability to
they're
like come out as transgender and find support networks that encourage them to develop themselves and be comfortable and live functioning lives. How dare they?
yeah, exactly. But never mind that I think generations are fake.
Oh, they are,
Um,
but
like yeah, but no, yeah, exactly. So I'm so much glad because if I had had some access to some of those resources and media and representation stuff like that, I'm very fortunate that my gender and my orientation I don't believe played a super huge role in my development because I definitely thought I was heterosexual for a very long time. Um, I didn't really have the language to describe not being comfortable with presenting overtly masculine.
yeah,
So it's only within the past few years that I've thought I might be able to identify as non-binary. But when we're talking like over 10 years ago, when
yeah, yeah.
these feelings in relationship, experimentation and whatnot happened.
Yeah, you can't
I mean,
put words to it until somebody puts words to it. Like, oh yeah, that's the thing. I'm that.
yeah.
Let's go around with that.
Oh, yeah, and of course, and as a sorry, just as a real quick add on to that, I mean, like, I had spent a lot of time like denying those kinds of things. Like, I engaged in a lot of victim blaming myself, which again was a very another unfortunate part of the trauma. Like, I was one of those people where there was a story at least in the furry fandom a while ago. Some artist woman, she had basically been coerced over a period of a year by a male artist, and like he had basically gotten her drunk at his place, and um I don't know if
Nastiness ensued.
well, yeah, without he did he performed a sexual act with her that she did not give consent for. That's I don't want to get you banned or anything like that, but
Like I can just
yeah,
make a
so
new Twitch account. It's not like I give a fuck or anything like that. Like that's
well,
why I
but
come on here drunk so we can just trip over these landmines, and then somebody who's a little bit smarter than both of us
well,
can come in and say, "Oh yeah, we can avoid these spots and have this conversation." That's the
oh
mission
yeah,
statement.
exactly,
It's like tripping on landmines
yeah,
while drunk.
hell yeah. Oh yeah, so,
Yeah,
so I mean, like, I would do like after when that came up, I was a big like, oh well, he's an asshole. He shouldn't have done that. But I mean, you should take personal responsibility for your actions. you should have known that when you went to his house, to his apartment, that he was interested in doing a sex on you. So really, both sides are kind of to blame here.
Oh
And
God.
a large, wet, ripping fart. Um, and yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that was part of me for a long time. Like I didn't understand, quote unquote, like being gender fluid or non-binary, um, even being transgender. Um, and of course, I didn't understand, sexual assault and rape and that kind of thing, like how it actually functions, how these
Yeah.
power dynamics play out. And again, it wasn't until basically when Me Too started that I was able to kind of come to terms with my own trauma and realize that a lot of the reasons why I fought against so much of this was because I had gone through it myself.
Yeah. And
And
if I can segue on
go
here
for
because
it.
you have, that was the one thing uh, that like well it's not one thing. It's a nebulous, indefinable, shape shifting thing of a thing.
Mhm,
You mentioned that last stream when I pressed you on the PTSD thing
mhm,
on there. It's like, oh well, da 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 da, and you did like, I don't want me getting that to cheapen other people's on there, and that's kind of a mentality that you see a lot. It's a weird thing. I can't quite describe it. It's like, if I get
mhm,
this thing and if I identify as this thing, that will cheapen it for other people. And
mhm,
conversely, if other people get this thing, that will cheapen it for me. Like you see it. The flip side of it would be like, oh well, I worked hard and was like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll buy him a six pack. My mechanic friend that I occasionally drink with, like we had this discussion because he's not big on the lefty stuff,
mhm,
and it's like we go through all these hypothetical things on here, and it's like he's saying, oh well, I don't want this and da 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 da. And it's like, well, here's this hypothetical situation which you don't get on there. It's like, no, I'm still against it. It's like, so it seems to me that it's not anything about what you're saying on there. It's the sense that if other people get these things that you worked for, that makes the work that you put in for it cheapened. And I think that kind
mhm,
of that mentality is a little bit on there and goes into we treat these things like they're a zero sum game. Like if
mhm,
somebody else gets it, then we're gonna, if we get it, then that's gonna be a loss for somebody else that gets it and all this like that. And you bring the biggest counterpoint to it in this conversation is that with the Me Too movement, with all these other little bits of activism, people telling the stories, they use like they stumble across a language and they come across a language, they invent the language that we need to address our stuff on there. So it's more of a communal. Like the more other people get advanced on there, the more that we have the advancement because the tools they use can be used on our other stuff on there, and
mhm.
that's why we're tripping over landmines right now is because we might come up with the right language as to do on there.
Yeah.
And that mentality, that whole thing is I don't even know what to call it or to describe it or something like that. It's all or nothing on there, and that does kind of like, I'm not sure if it's rooted in a lot of other things, but it's definitely rooted in American capitalism and American. I'm just doing a big, huge gesture with both my arms, just trying to encompass like a huge glow cloud or something like that. Like it's that. It's all of that stuff right there.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Because I mean, you're not wrong because part of it is baked into our culture. This, rugged individualism is unquestionably part of it. So, it's, very much a pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You are responsible for what happens to you, to your own actions. So you can't, there's no one's fault in any situation except your own.
Yeah,
So if other people can get past whatever, then so can you. And if you can't, then well,
that's a
and
personal failing on your end.
right, exactly. So that's why, yeah, you can't say there's anything systematic. You can't say that there's uh, like there's fault to be placed on anyone else because at the end of the day, if you didn't want it to have happened to you, then you wouldn't have let it happen to you.
Yeah,
Which of
yeah,
course is not even close to
Oh
how any
God,
of that
no.
works at
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
not even a little bit. But it's baked into our culture that the again the pull yourself up by your bootstraps bull crap.
The great man theory, the great man narrative, that kind of bullshit. Which fuck
Mhm.
that. As opposed to we're all in this together because we fucking are.
Right, exactly. Instead of, I mean, and I'm fortunate, or I'm very fortunate, and I think a lot of people are very fortunate that that's been changing with the rise of social media. While it has also, of course, made
Nazis.
Nazis, which is unfortunate. It's also allowed people to organize and find solidarity and find community um, where they might not have been able to otherwise. And so instead of basically feeling isolated, because how do you talk about some of these things with people? You can find people who are already talking about it and then join the conversation or at least follow along
Yeah,
and
yeah,
kind of learn more about yourself, which you wouldn't have been able to do um, without access to these social media spaces. So I'm thankful, if nothing else, it is starting to change.
yeah. And the rise of war and all other stuff like that definitely helps too.
Oh yeah, Vor of course fixes everything. Of course,
Oh yeah,
you can literally just eat. You can literally just
yeah.
eat your problems.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Eat your feelings right there.
Jesus. I'm signing the cross right now. You can't see it, but that's what I'm doing.
I mean, it had to turn up eventually. I mean, I do. Like, I'm surprised we haven't met each other before Twitter, considering the circles that we run in. But here we are.
It's a big, broad, wide internet.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
question about that.
yeah. Yeah, we're gonna talk about war now. Trauma is good and all, but let's do war. Uh,
Yeah, man.
yeah, yeah, it's not a
I
hard pill to swallow. It's like talking about trauma and systemic issues. Hard.
yeah.
Vor, easy to swallow, easy to stomach. Trying to think of something else in
Right,
there.
son. Uh, Oh God, please don't.
I'm just giving you a toothy grin right now. There we go.
Oh God. Slash Emmy. There's I don't know, whatever. But
Yeah, burps and what are we talking about here? So trauma,
right. So
which is a bit,
yeah, and he said, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, well, trauma. Like, 'cause that, like, it is a very primal emotion. It's like you like, it's very understandable that like people don't have the words for it, and we come up with like cliches and all this other stuff like that because it's a the primordial fear-induced thing, and just having somebody explain to you is like, oh yeah, so this is how trauma works.
Hmm.
This is what's happening now. That's that's hard, and a lot of it is kind of shunned because the moment that those words come into common parlance and people get joy of them from them, well, not joy, or healing from them,
Hmm.
along comes somebody who, through one reason or another, decides that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and turn that into a punchline or use it to hurt you or all that other stuff. And
Hmm.
actually, hold on, let me just. No, you go right there. There we go. Sorry about that. Just had to do in there.
Hmm.
And it's like, you remember back in the '90s when we decided to say African American instead of black person, and we just solved racism forever.
Hmm.
I mean, this,
Exactly.
yeah, the
Bill
stig.
Clinton was the
Yeah,
first
go
black
right ahead.
president. Don't
Yeah,
forget.
yeah, yeah, totally. But it's like the language is there. Like, there's gonna be the stigma around trauma, and the moment that we like just switch to new language and stuff like that, is it's still gonna be there. And there's people that are gonna try and attack it for whatever reason as unmasculine or anything like that, because manliness means having to take care of your shit without having to do stuff. It should just be some naturally stoic thing on there, which I kind of think is another thing that's like the other side of the sword of the, hey, online communities, let us do these things, is a lot of masculinity back in the good old days was very subtle and performative and stuff like that. Like,
Mm.
I remember I'm gonna go back to my mechanic friend. I'm gonna go ahead and have to buy him two six packs now. Um, I said something on there that was pretty condescending. I'm gonna admit that.
Hmm.
And he mentioned it the next day, and it's just like, oh yeah, I was drunk. Take it up with drunk me. And then I thought about it for a little bit, and then I had some whiskey, like I always do. I was like, hey, look, you said that, and I need to apologize for that because we've always come at each other with a place of respect, and that was disrespectful, and I apologize for it. And it's
Hmm.
just like, oh yeah, you don't have to say anything. No, I do have to say something. We don't have to say anything further from that, but it needs to be
Hmm.
addressed because of all it is like that. And that kind of subtlety gets lost in this online world um, where men are men, ugh, and men, and they just you have these teenagers who they don't have you know role models that can relate to them because it's all digital and dad doesn't fucking care because dad's
Hmm.
fucking working and doing shit, and they go on these online spaces and they're just trying to be men, and they're just like a whole bunch of hyperbolic pantomiming extreme action movie bullshit
Yeah.
like we have the action movie version of what is it? Philip K. Dick novels without the subtlety, which is fun, but we need the subtlety.
I mean, and of course, it's masculinity has become all of it has become lifestyle branding too, all in its own way too. Like, I mean, you'll
Microwave
see
meals
shit
for
like
men.
man wipes, you know, and there's got to be that you can't just have regular body wash. You've got to have Old Spice or Axe body wash.
Yeah,
We can't we can't catch ourselves doing anything that might be feminine,
yeah.
because and again it's not the fault of individual men, and that's something that we have to be cognizant of.
Oh yeah, no,
You
most
can't
certainly.
blame individual. I mean, you can hold people accountable for their actions, but we are all products of the environments of which we're raised and the environments in which we live in. So, like, Old Spice can have all these funny commercials that we can enjoy with like Terry Crews and everyone.
Just screaming
Excuse me.
and flexing his
Uh,
pecs. Oh my god, Terry Crews is the best.
yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Um, excuse me. I'm sorry. Um, but what it does is it still reinforces like that. This masculinity is good. Like, so,
I mean, I don't.
it doesn't critique that masculinity. It still uses it. It may push it over the top, but it still utilizes that masculine imagery to sell a product to masculine men.
I don't think that in and of itself is gonna be the main thing. Because we love ourselves some
Well, sure.
himbos. I mean, Twitter loves himbos. Himbos are great. Uh, and himbos is the
I, I,
same masculinity, just without. Um, I would, if I were to go ahead and tap into it, is um, it doesn't use violence as a means to express its and exercise their agency.
mhm.
Himbos don't do that. Himbos don't do that, and that's the main thing. That's why we love himbos because we get all the good stuff that we like without um, the again need to inflict damage upon other people's as an expression of its own abilities and means to well its own agency right there, and that's why himbos are
Yeah.
good, and that's why Terry Crews is good because
Hmm.
when Terry Crews gets groped and has to do on that, he doesn't punch that. He has the words and can handle those complicated emotions. Himbo masculinity. That's what we need. We need himbo masculinity.
I'm down with that.
I think
Sounds like
yeah,
a plan to me.
we're rebranding masculinity. All good masculine men are himbos now, and
There we go.
yeah.
Yeah, we're done with metrosexuality. God, that was an absolutely horrible time. Um,
I mean,
It's like,
yeah.
you can't take care of yourself without still being a man. You've got to be metrosexual.
I don't.
If you
Yeah.
like enjoy getting your hair cut and smelling nice and like dressing nice. Like,
Oh yeah. No.
I'm so glad we're past that, because that was just like, I didn't even have the language at the time, and even I knew it was kind of sad. I was like, why?
Like
They're just
yeah,
men. They're
they're
just
just getting their
dudes.
shit done.
Like,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like that's such a big deal, but it is. And if I can rope it back around to the whole trauma thing for a little bit there,
Oh yeah, yeah. That
um,
this
I think right, exactly, because it is a serious and pervasive issue. And again, as I mentioned, as we mentioned with interacting with people in online spaces and whatnot, it also makes it people easy for people to basically find scapegoats or find some kind of some kind of like solidarity, even if it's with unhealthy people and unhealthy ideas.
gamers
So,
rise up.
like, right, exactly. Um, you'll have like the dudes who are like, well, I was beaten as a child and I turned out fine. So I don't see what the big deal is if you get beaten as a kid. And it's like, did you
Okay,
turn out fine?
did you?
What are you doing? Look at what you're doing. I don't know if you ended up all that fine, but like at the same time, like that's what happens there because you can't because masculinity can be used as a barrier against any kind of like self-reflection like that because well, I mean being a man means just toughening up and just dealing with it. Like even though you shouldn't have to, that's where a lot of these men come from because they don't have the words to describe anything else because they say, "Oh, well, you're just a man. Shut up. Don't complain about it. Don't even don't think about what your high school basketball coach did to you in the locker room. Other that's happened to everybody, and no one else complains about it. So what makes you special?
Yeah, yeah. That if you engage in it, then other people will be lessened for it, or something like that. That
Like
you're
you're
yeah,
yeah, then like you're giving power to
yeah.
like either feminine or non-masculine or SJW forces, and then like this manufactured masculine identity, which again brings it back to the capitalism point. That's the only identity you have, or maybe you're the strong identity you identify with most strongly, and like
Studley
that
gamer
threatens that.
men. Buy this keyboard
Man,
and shave yourself.
right, exactly. So I mean, when that identity gets threatened, then and you of course you react adversely, you react negatively, of course, because that's all of our reactions, that's all of our default reactions
Yeah.
is to lash out because when we get challenged, that's just human psychology to
Like if
lash
CIA,
out.
if CSI does another like furry episode, we're all gonna be the same people. It's just
Oh god, I hope they, yeah, no.
it's
Pretty much
probably
just
yeah.
no.
Yeah,
Oh lord.
yeah, full circle now. It's happened to us. The only thing
Yeah,
about it is
exactly.
those guys that made fun of us are the same fuckers that are doing the bad shit now. It's fucking they're
It's a very incestuous relationship.
ooh woo.
Ooh, good god. But yeah, um yeah,
Self-effacing.
that's it all bleeds together like that. Because I mean, again, like I'm very fortunate, again, to, or fortunate or unfortunate maybe. um I
You're
mentioned that
you're the
when I was
fortunate
young.
son and the unfortunate son, depending on how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Where I I never really identified very strongly with masculinity at all. um I didn't identify with femininity, but I knew what I didn't like was I hated, the big manly man dude bro archetype, like the high school jocks and all that. Like I
Chuck
hated, hated,
Norris.
hated, hated all that shit. Um and like but there really wasn't anything else, there wasn't anywhere else for me to go. Like there wasn't an identity for, a guy who
Did
doesn't
you
like
not get a
being.
Prince album in your life at all or anything like that or
Nope, God no.
no Prince?
No.
Oh, yeah, that's what we need to
Nope.
do. We need to like invent a time machine and just send CDs of Prince like to the 90s and it's like, "Oh yeah, you don't have to listen to Slipknot unironically in
Oh,
2002." and drink
Oh
wine.
god, I did not listen to Slipknot unironically. I barely touched them, but I definitely did go all in on Linkin Park, no question.
I mean, Linkin Park at least they kind of they were emo new metal. Like they definitely they were in touch with those feelings on there. They were very
Mm-hmm.
they were
No,
not.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like there is Linkin Park, because there's always going to be the reaction to it. So it's like we have these words, we have this language, we have that. There's always going to be the counter reaction, well, not like the reaction to
Mm-hmm.
that. We're seeing it now with more about 5 years into it now, after Gamergate and all that other bullshit.
God.
Yeah,
Of
sociologists are going to
course.
have so much fun with Gamergate. Oh my
Yep.
god. I mean, it's
Oh
like
god, I can't believe fucking gamers made Nazis cool again. Of fucking course they did.
I would have thought it would have been Tom of Finland, really, more than anything else.
Might have been what?
Tom of Finland. Yeah, we're gonna get
But
some real interesting porn like 5, 10 years from now after all this is blown over.
Christ. But yeah, exactly. And like that's just how powerful masculinity is in just in harming men as well too. Because look at fucking I look at him like Jesus. I look at what happened to our entire goddamn planet because of men being unable to basically process even the most benign like psych 101 or gender studies 101 level of criticism of of their lives like that they couldn't handle that much and
Do
now
you
we have
think?
Nazis everywhere.
Yeah. Do you think if they had the language and they have the tools, that would have
It,
changed? And what language would we need to do forward to, like, I don't want to say fix men, but give them the tools they need in order to fix themselves and get laid and not get laid, depending on how they want. You don't have to have sex. I mean, sex is not for everybody. But what tools do you think
right.
we would need for, like, the kids now, knowing what we know of, like, how 4chan and all that other stuff metastasized and
Yeah.
was all that, like, what do you think would we would need
Like,
now to, yeah,
what could we do to prevent another Gamergate essentially?
well, not prevent Gamergate. I mean, I think, like, what would you need, um, if you have a kid and you want him to avoid all of the terrible toxic shit you did,
Hmm.
from trauma, and to avoid putting himself in that situation, where well, not to avoid putting himself, like, you don't, like, there's gonna be predatory people
Yeah.
on there, like, how to notice the situation and do damage control and harm reduction and all of this, like, how do you, what do you think that would look like? What tools do you think you'd want to give him?
um I mean it's completely unrealistic to hope for like systematic change or hope for like more government programs because unfortunately just there's too many reactionary powers have too much presence in places where we could possibly legislate solutions. So so unfortunately it has to be essentially a matter of I guess expanding access to these resources
Yeah.
is the best that I can think of. Like we pretty much have to do it ourselves essentially
Well, yeah,
is
yeah,
we
yeah.
have to be out there making these SJW comics, making these SJW video games because
Right.
God knows that the industry themselves isn't gonna they're not gonna do it themselves
Like
because they're gonna
Stardew
keep
Valley
doing what they've already
sold.
been doing.
Like Stardew Valley sold for fucking, like, gangbusters, and what are they doing now? They're just making more loot boxes on their shit.
Uh,
It's like they don't make better
yeah,
games;
exactly.
they just make better loot boxes, and they, like, yeah. Uh,
So,
but no, like, say, like, what would you want to tell a well, not, like, a teenager now, about, like, noticing a bad relationship, and just like how like, is there a way to teach kids that ending a relationship, it might be the best thing to do, I mean, it sucks, but it will reduce damage in the long term for you and all and stuff like that. And what would you do? Like, what would you say? Um, well, I'm gonna go ahead and take over here because I have the conch cell. I shall speak. Uh, like I do see some kids in the community. Well, they're fucking growing ass every day.
Sure.
Like they're 18, 19 now. Um, that have residual trauma for it. Some of them from the same people that inflicted trauma upon me, and that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh, so
Um,
that was so and so, and then like that sucks. But in my head, it's like the hills are alive with the sound of it not being my fault. They actually were an asshole, which is like I should have like expected that as default, given the fact that I was a 20-something-year-old kid and he was a 40-something-year-old
mhm.
man, and that's just like the depth on there. He has to be the more custodial person just by virtue of him being the older person in the relationship, and if he doesn't want to take
Yeah.
that responsibility, he shouldn't have been engaged in that relationship at all. But the whole
Mhm.
thing was is he doesn't engage in those relationships in good faith. He engages them to basically just go through and destroy naive subby boys and just turn them into, which is fun. I mean, it's nice to know that that's still going on in your local community, uh,
Yeah.
and that he's still at it. And I'm not gonna go on there, but it's like like a good deal of it. You want to avoid the mistakes that you've made and just try and steer him away from that.
Mhm.
Uh, Let me take a look here, and that's easier said than done because
Yeah.
there are some things that you have to learn the hard way. And but it's just like,
It's a. Mhm.
what am I thinking? So here's my thing.
Mhm.
It's okay to leave a relationship. That doesn't mean you're bad as a person. It just means the relationship didn't work out, and that's okay. Relationships are hard, and if you're getting hurt by a relationship more often than you're getting helped, then that's not a good relationship for you. You're not going to get a medal for changing people. You're not going to get a medal for sticking
Yeah.
it out and being that person that stoically does it, even though you might think and hope that you will. That will never come. I think Cam's your medal got lost in the mail, same as mine. Um, like I've not gotten that medal yet.
Yeah.
Two, trauma is gonna be fucking hard to get over.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be the same person that you were. If you try pretending that you're going to go back to where you were before, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Trauma, as all things in life, is a very transformative process. And
You can't go home again, right?
no, no, you can't. Well, I can go home, but it's just kind of awkward because like I have flashbacks over the sink that I tried to cut myself over, and that's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh god.
Mm.
But at least I tried to cut myself over the sink, so it was good for easy cleanup. Which, be
There you
conscious
go.
with your self harm there.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's a plus side. I mean, it's like
I
yes,
mean,
you don't want to make a mess. Like,
yeah.
come on, be respectful.
I mean that's the worst thing about finding out you survived a suicide attempt is that you have to fucking clean up after yourself afterwards. That's just demoralizing. When you get
Well,
little reminders of how you kind of suck at like dying as you mop up
mhm.
vomit from taking all those pills. Um, we
Yeah.
got really dark here.
Well, it wasn't dark already.
Yeah.
Talking about rape and trauma
Oh
and
god.
whatnot.
Yeah, we are really just stepping on landmines here. The content warning was
Well,
not enough. This should not be suitable for anybody. Um, but like, what was it? Trauma is transformative, uh,
yeah.
and one of the things on there is like victimhood. You don't want that to be your identity. Like
Mhm.
it's cumbersome, and and um, it's not a good life. It really isn't. When you make like when you have your ideas like, oh, I've been hurt, and I'm not gonna
Mhm.
feel the same, and that's a shame, and I don't know, I don't want to go on. Like, you can feel that, you can, but always look for the ways to go out of it, and look for like, what do you want to do, what kind of go on there, because that's not going to be your entire, well, hopefully not your entire life,
Yeah,
and
hopefully.
yeah, like, and you should try and remember that it doesn't define you. um, you don't want it to define you, because it's not,
Yeah.
that's not on there. Like, you will feel that way for a good time, and there will be times where it will always overwhelm you, and you can feel that. And you know what? That's fine.
Hmm.
Like, you will feel that there will be shittiness, and you feeling shitty is not a failure on your part or anybody else's part. That's just, you will feel shitty by virtue of being a human being.
Yeah.
And there will be times where you feel shitty for a reason, and there will be times where you feel shitty for no reason. There will be times where you can solve the shitty feeling by doing things, by buying something, by like going out and reading a book, and there are times that you won't. And sometimes you just kind of gotta ride that out, and that isn't a failure on your part. Anything like that. But seek like the mechanisms to get out of that cycle and to get out of that stuff. And you don't want to hurt other people just because you're hurt. And that's the
Hmm.
big thing on there, because even like, they've done scientific studies where like, they put rats in a cage, and they shocked the cage, and the rats got shocked, and like, they studied how they do them. Even animals, when they're hurt, will lash out on other things as a form of coping on there. And we,
Hmm.
being conscious things, want to avoid that and reduce the damage that we do to others on there. And that's gonna, you want to be
Yeah.
conscious of that, and you want to, it like, admit that, as you said, there's some bridges that can't be repaired.
Hmm.
There's some bridges that can't be repaired, and I mean, I'm not gonna say that's okay, because we do want to reduce harm, but it's just like, you're human, and you're
Hmm.
not running over people who are protesting in front of border facilities, or shooting out mosques, or cheering on the people that do. So you're already doing good. Um, you're already doing good, because again, why would gamers make Nazis cool? Fuck,
God.
hell world. What are we doing here? But it's just like, you're not gonna get a medal for sticking it out. Don't let trauma define you. There's going to be a ways out here. You will feel inexplicably shitty, and
Hmm.
get mechanisms that will prevent you from doing that, hurting yourself, hurting your others, and getting it on there. And some will work some of the
Yeah.
time, some will work none of the time, some will work hopefully all the time. But you gotta rotate them, and find out what works at that given moment.
Hmm.
You always want to be focused on what you want, and want to accomplish. Like, I just got out of a nervous breakdown where I haven't worked for 3 months because I'm finally on unemployment, which is nice.
Yeah.
And like, I want a job, and I applied to jobs today. It was like, I was in bed until 5 in the afternoon, and that's great because I didn't want to get out of bed that day. Yay me! But it's
Yeah.
like if it was, 3 years ago, me, it's just like, oh fuck, I'm gonna beat myself up over it. It's like, don't beat yourself up over not
Hmm.
getting out of bed. Beat yourself up if other people are kind of suffering on it. And I don't think we have those discussions as men, manly men, where it's just
Hmm.
like, yeah, some days you're gonna feel shitty and you can't do anything about it. And despite the fact that you feel, and a good deal of, I'm gonna say the S word again. You can sing it with me if you want. Three, two, one. Our society,
Society.
society, will tell you that you should feel
Our
shitty about it.
society.
You don't have to. And it's like, those are lessons that we don't teach in school, and we used to teach in our TV shows, but then we did Walter White kind of stuff like that. And I don't,
Ugh.
and we have the deconstruction of that with BoJack Horseman, where it's basically just the same thing as a sitcom, only horribly depressing.
Yeah.
Do you watch
I mean,
BoJack?
I've got thoughts about BoJack. I used to watch it.
You used to watch it. Well, I
Yeah.
have nothing to follow up on my thing, because I'm just gonna go ahead and recount the bases, because I'm sobering up now.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah. How does BoJack How do you think that handles trauma? Do they think they portray it well, or do you want to add anything else to that?
Um, it just eh, there's a lot of issues with the show that I feel like they should have been started to get resolved after the second season. Like, I get it that it's supposed to be about, how trauma takes a long time to heal and whatnot, but it's also a TV show,
Well,
and
I think the thing with
like,
BoJack is that is kind of the point. Like how sitcoms were like it's always happy and it resets to the status quo at the end of the episode.
hmm
I think that's what they're doing, only with trauma and static on there, and I think that's kind of why I don't enjoy it and why you don't enjoy it. Um,
hmm
I think that's kind of one of the points of the meeting. But yeah, that is kind of they should be resolving their stuff. I can't even.
I mean, this was like with like season 5 or whatever, they like started to resolve it, but like I like to a certain point, it becomes it's a subgenre of media that I've decided to call misery porn. Um, where essentially, I mean, the name pretty much describes it. I mean, like, it's basically just designed to make you feel bad. Like, it could be anything from like The Walking Dead or to This Is Us to again something like BoJack Horseman, where like the point is to ruin your day and make you sad. And that's again that pretty much describes like BoJack Horseman. Like it took again like sure trauma takes a long time, but like there's so many seasons spent like oh quick sure BoJack keeps fucking up, but oh it's okay because we got to keep these characters around, so everything has to work out somehow, and but while still finding excuses to not improve oneself. Like it was exhausting. It was emotionally exhausting. And by that point, I had already begun to finally get over that phase of my life myself. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't go along with this. I can't adhere to this personally because
Yeah.
just because like again, pretty much what I said, what it comes down to is that it's a TV show. I mean, it doesn't have to be realistic. It can kind of speed things up a little bit and show the healing process. Well, the healing process didn't begin until like season 5. Like BoJack was still fucking up in season 4. Like
Yeah.
it took until that long for whoever the stoner kid was to just say like, dude, you can't just apologize every time you screw something up and expect everyone to forgive you. You need to do better. You need to be better. Like you
Yeah.
have to stop. And I mean like that could have happened in like 2 seasons before that. You could have cut that in half because like he's been the same person
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like all that time. And it's just comes down to like I've already gone through that and I don't need to see that reflected in my media essentially. Like I'm not against media that explores like dark subjects and whatnot. Just me personally, I wasn't able to sync up with BoJack, or I stopped being able to sync up with BoJack.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
because
season
it spent yeah.
I after I kind of got through season one, and then right at the end of season one, it's just like, no, no, I'm not gonna sit through this because I've been through this myself, and I didn't have a wonderful Hollywood mansion, or like a TV Guide magazine award that I could probably club somebody with if I really wanted to. And the safe word is red. Um, but it is. I think that's one of the things on there because it does very accurately depict coming out of trauma on there, and it's like you inflict trauma on others, and you don't become aware of it unless you're very lucky, and you have the words and all this like that. Like BoJack would have
Yeah.
probably been a different person if he had an for affinity account. Like he'd be a cam model at this point. Um,
Whomst among us.
whomst among us wouldn't. What am I thinking of here? But it is painful to watch in others. Ooh, and that's another thing that I would go ahead and impart upon our young Zoomers who are wise but have not yet shot themselves in the foot as much as we have because they have not been around enough. And they will shoot themselves in the foot in new and interesting ways after us. I can't.
And very publicly, where there will always be a record, and
I
no one will ever
know.
forget that thing that you did 5 years ago.
Oh God, it's gonna get real weird. I'm looking forward
Let's
to it.
talk about cancel culture.
Oh God.
Blah. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait until I actually get canceled for some of the shit that I say. But I don't think that's gonna happen just because I'm not presenting myself as an expert on anything like that. Like, I am not in a
Hmm.
position where you should revere me. I have built my entire platform on lies and contradictions and dick jokes. So I don't
Hmm.
think, unless some shit when I was 19 or an ex convinces somebody that they're right about their occurrence on things, which, some of them might be all right. Uh, no, I mean, I got receipts. It's fine. Um, Thank God for instant messenger. Um, but
Yeah.
no, that comes to another thing. As somebody who has been through trauma, you've no doubt gotten into a point in which you see somebody making the same mistakes and suffering in ways similar to you, and you want to help them, and they're just not there yet. Like, they're
Hmm.
just not ready to go on there. They're not ready to advance. Have you ever had to disengage with some people because of that at all?
Like because like they're making the mistakes that I have made, and as try as I may, I'm unable to show them that
Yeah,
what's going on is harmful.
little bit of that. Yeah, like you kind of want to pull them out, and you know that, like, if you keep on contacting with them, you're gonna keep on trying, and that's just not
Hmm.
something that you're gonna give leeway on there. You're not gonna see anything grow out of that because it's just this circumstance.
It's
Yeah,
unhealthy at a certain point. Yeah. There are a few friends. I mean, I definitely care very much about my friends. Possibly too much, or maybe I just don't, not in the correct, in the proper or more most healthy ways, perhaps. Um, like I've definitely there's a friend of mine who fortunately I'm very close friends with, um, who was in a long distance relationship, like across the ocean relationship, and he was describing all the ways that this person was abusive to them and whatnot, and how bad they made them feel and whatnot, and all these things that I could, and like they're all gigantic red flags to me at this point with like what I've gone through with like my own relationships and whatnot. Um, and there's only so many ways that I can tell them, like you just gotta dump their ass
yeah,
because
dude, you're
like
not gonna win that fight.
it's right, exactly. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, they're in love with this person, um, whether truthfully or not. I mean, doesn't matter too much. I mean, that's it, what it comes down to is that's how they feel,
And love doesn't
and
always win.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And fortunately, they did eventually break that off, but they're traumatized now themselves. They're they have difficulty trusting people. They have difficulty, um, yeah, just leaning on people. I try to let them lean on me, but they have difficulty opening up because they were abused by someone who was so close to them. And the only thing that I can do, if there's one thing that I want to do with my very limited platform that I have and whatnot, between on Twitter, in the world and in the world writ large, is I just want to be able to like share my own experiences. um and I guess the word I would use would be lead by example. um just be able to tell my truth and pray that someone who needs to hear it will hear it when they need to hear it, so that they will perhaps not make the same mistakes as me, or at the very least they'll have
They'll
a
heal
proper
quicker.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, heal
What's up?
quick. Like, they'll heal a bit quicker, and
Oh, yeah,
hopefully,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or at the very least, there'll be early detection, essentially.
yeah, early detection, harm reduction. Yeah, yeah. Because if I'm gonna
Yeah.
go through this pain, somebody else better fucking learn from it, right? A little bit. I mean, it's not wrong. I mean, that's my mantra right there. That's why I do this shit. Like, and that's okay. We
Yeah,
can do good things for the wrong reasons, and still good things get done. So when we do
yeah.
bad things for the right reasons, then we have to worry about it, or both. I don't know. Watch The Good Place if you want philosophy. Fuck, I don't know this shit.
Good place is so good. That's the point of this entire episode is to stand the good place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This
Oh, we
is
stan.
totally standing. So this is where we're gonna. I think that this is a good
I think
spot
that
to
about
end
sums it
this.
up.
Yeah, this forking
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
Thank you
That's
for
it. Yeah,
watching all this shirt, and thank you very much, Cam, to coming on here and just having very candid and very. I'd like to think we were articulate, but just having candid conversations about just the uncomfortable shit in our lives. That.
very candid conversations.
Oh, all right, dear sir. I'm gonna leave on that. That's a good one. Thank you for coming on, Erlen.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again for everyone who watched. Adios.